Could your daily habits, the seemingly insignificant things that are a part of your daily routine, be potentially what is keeping you from success or keeping you stuck? Today I'm going to be sharing what I believe are the 7 things that you could be keeping an eye out for as a part of your daily routine, but also what you can do instead of those things. This is going to be the first of a 2-part episode on this particular topic. So if this sounds like something that you might be interested in, then grab your cup of tea and let's dive into it. They say that we are what we repeatedly do, and excellence is not an act, but a habit. This is great when it comes to positive habits. It tells us that those little things that we do every single day is putting us closer to our version of success. But what about those potentially low value habits or those detrimental habits? This is something that Jeff Olson talks about in his book called The Slight Edge. He says that every day we have the opportunity to master the mundane, to do the things that are easy to do, but equally as easy not to do. Every day we are casting a vote for the person that we are going to be in the future. So we can either cast a vote that is closer to our version of success, or we can cast a vote that is going to send us further away from our version of success. This is the latest installment in my habit series, and as I've shared in my previous content, I have been obsessed with habits and routines for as long as I can remember, and I've been experimenting and researching in this space during that time. So these 7 habits that I'm going to share today is based on my own personal experience as well as some of the science behind this as well. The first habit that I suggest that you keep an eye out for as part of your daily routine is your social media scrolling. Now, I know this is an often recommended one, but what I want to do is dive into some of the numbers behind why it is so important to keep an eye out on this habit as part of your own routine. Research from the marketing company GWI estimates that the typical working age internet user spends 2.5 hours a day on social media. Now, based on those numbers from that research, what I want to do is extend those numbers out even further. 2.5 daily hours of social media equals approximately 17.5 hours per week. That is the annual equivalent of 910 hours. Now, if we take an average 40-hour work week, that is the equivalent of 23 40-hour work weeks a year. So by these estimates, we are potentially scrolling social media for the equivalent of nearly half a working year. As an alternative to that, imagine if you spent those same 23 work weeks working on a side hustle or a project or an interest or a hobby that you have outside of work, or even just in your own personal relationships, or doing things that you actually enjoy instead of scrolling social media. The next habit that I suggest that you keep an eye out for in your daily routine is watching too much TV. Now, I know this is often one that we hear a lot as well, but let's take a look at the numbers again for this one. Most Australian and US reports estimate that the average person watches 2.5 to 3 hours of television per day. So let's extend these numbers out again. 2.5 to 3 hours of daily TV. That extends out to 910 hours, or up to 1,092 hours of TV. Once again, that is the equivalent of 23 work weeks, or even up to 27 work weeks. So once again, we are looking at approximately the equivalent of half a working year. Now, humans are said to process tens of thousands of messages and decisions every single day. So it is understandable that with that cognitive load, that we are going to need some downtime, that we're going to need that feeling of being able to switch off our brains and just completely relax. But what I recommend instead is to try and make even your passive downtime somewhat productive wherever you can. So maybe instead of just watching whatever show you feel like binging on TV, switch to maybe something that is in your field of interest. So maybe it is documentaries or YouTube channels that are related to one of your hobbies or your interests, or if you can manage it in your downtime, something related to your work as well. You might even want to consider turning off the TV altogether and maybe picking up a book instead. Research from the University of Sussex actually compared the knowledge of readers with TV watchers, and readers were said to have better analytical skills, better judgment, and better problem-solving skills. And because things like books, magazines, or just written text in general tends to contain more unique words than what we experience when watching TV, it also means that readers tend to have a better vocabulary and better communication skills. The third habit that I suggest that you keep an eye out for as part of your daily habits or your daily routine is consuming too much news. It feels like with all the recent world events that we have experienced in the last few years that we have become even more accustomed to being glued to our screens for the latest update. I grew up in a household that watched the news every morning and in the evening as well, and I completely understand that feeling of having the news be a part of your daily routine. But what I would want you to do instead is to look at the maths that we did earlier and apply that back to your news consumption. How much news are you actually consuming every single day? How many minutes does this take you, and how do you extend these numbers out in a week and in a complete year? And what is the work week equivalent of that time? Ask yourself if this time could be better spent on any other hobbies, interests, or relationships that you might have. I used to think that if I didn't watch the news, that I would be completely ignorant to what was happening at a local, national, and global level. But what I have found is that even when you don't consume the news, you are always going to have friends, colleagues, and your family fill you in on the things that are going to be most relevant to you. And of course, the nature of news at the moment as well is that we also get it as a part of our social media feeds too. Remember that the news is primarily designed for shock value as opposed to feel good or educational. So ask yourself if it really is serving you in any way. What I have found more useful is actually consuming the latest industry updates as they're relevant to me. So I follow news related to my niches, and they actually also help to digest things that might be happening on the world stage or the national stage in a way that is actually relevant to me and my work. The fourth habit that I recommend keeping an eye out for in your daily routine is overwhelming your first brain. I'll get to what your second brain is in my next tip. But David Allen, in his book, Getting Things Done, proposes that stress comes from the things that we keep in our brain that are not yet in a system that is useful to us, a system that can help us to execute on that information or those ideas. Tiago Forte expands on this even further in his book, Building a Second Brain. He proposes that when we first encounter an idea or information is not necessarily when it is going to be most useful to us. But if we build a system that is secondary to our first brain, that is external to our first brain, then we can capture that information or that idea in a system that is going to be useful to us at a later date. It's going to help our future self. So what is your equivalent of your own second brain? How are you taking all of those ideas and the information that is potentially overwhelming your physical brain and putting them into a more useful system? One of the ways that I do this personally is via the Notes app on my iPhone. I put all of my ideas and all of the things that I am working on in this system to then be actioned through my various different other systems as well. The fifth habit that I suggest could potentially be keeping you stuck and away from success is poor brain food. In his book Limitless, Jim Quick challenges us to think about how we are feeding our other second brain. This is the second brain that we have in our physical body, and that is our gut. Our digestive system is lined with hundreds of millions of neurons that are actually also connected to our physical brain. So if we are trusting our gut to do our thinking and performing for us, then how can we actually ensure that we are giving it the right fuel to be able to perform? So if you see your gut as though it is the car of your body, what is the fuel that you would be most happy to give it that is going to help you perform at its peak capacity? And be really wary of when you are putting into your body things that aren't actually going to support you in your peak performance. I absolutely love all kinds of food, so I understand the desire to indulge in foods that aren't necessarily considered brain food. But I guess it comes back to what Jeff Olson mentions in The Slight Edge. Every day we have the opportunity to cast a vote that our future self is going to actually experience. So when you are making those choices, when it comes to food that relates to your gut health and to your second brain, just remember that you are casting a vote for the person that you want to be. The sixth habit that I recommend keeping an eye out for in your daily routine is not moving your body. One of my favorite sayings is a body in motion stays in motion. I've personally never been able to solve any of my problems while sitting on the couch. And there is some interesting research to support this that came out of the University of Stanford. It showed that walking increased creativity by 60%. And this was experienced in walks that were just 5 to 16 minutes long and that were both indoors and outdoors. The University of Sussex research on reading also revealed that walking can help reduce stress by 42%. It moves our brainwave frequency into the same brainwave that we experience when we are meditating. So instead of sitting on the couch to try to solve whatever problem it is that you are working through that is keeping you stuck or away from success, why not go for a walk that is even just 5 minutes long and experience that spike in creativity as to how you might be able to solve your problem? As another alternative to walking, you may want to also consider picking up yoga if this is not something that you do already. Research from Harvard University compared the brains of those that practice yoga with those that don't. And it showed that those who practice yoga had thicker areas in their brain relating to learning and memory and information processing as well. So yoga might be another way to work through whatever problem you might be experiencing. The seventh habit that I suggest keeping an eye out for as part of your daily routine is your low value leisure time. Now this is a more overarching way to look at things that could be low value, like your social media scrolling, your TV watching, or anything else that falls within this low value leisure time category when it comes to your own life. As I've mentioned previously, Cal Newport talks about this in his book Digital Minimalism. Consider switching your low value leisure time to high value hobbies instead. For example, playing an instrument has been shown to have really great effects on your brain. It increases the grey matter in your brain and the connection between your left and right hemispheres as well. Thank you and subscribe for the next 7 habits that I believe could be keeping you stuck in my next episode.